Welcome to the Wicket.
Hello and welcome to our weekly wrap-up of all things cricket, courtesy of Arab News here at The Wicket. I'm Brian Murgatroyd, and with me as ever to assess the happenings in the sport locally in the Gulf, regionally in Asia and worldwide, Arab News columnist Jon Pike and Arab News cricket reporter Subas Humagain. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Brian. Hi, Subas.
Hi, John. Hello, Brian.
And in this episode, as the league stage of the Indian Premier League reaches its climax, we chew over all the permutations. We discuss some significant talking points out of India over the past week. We look at the Pakistan men's tour of Ireland, with both teams in T20I mode ahead of the upcoming World Cup in the Caribbean and the USA. We reflect upon the first international match of the English summer as England's women survive a major scare to overcome their Pakistan counterparts. We wrap up the T20I series between Bangladesh and Zimbabwe men and Bangladesh and India's women. We discuss the news that England's seaman swing bowler James Anderson will bow out of international cricket after the first test of the series against the West Indies in July, following more than 2 decades at the highest level. We react to the news that the UAE's own T20 league, the ILT20, has decided to start its third season in January 2025. And on top of all that, Subas and Jon give us their personal highlights from the past week. So, as ever, plenty of subjects to work through, so let's start. Let's talk now about the Indian Premier League, which is moving rapidly towards the end of the league stages. As we record this podcast, the teams in the all-important top 4 places that mean a ticket to the playoffs are Kolkata Knight Riders, Rajasthan Royals, Chennai Super Kings and Sunrisers Hyderabad. And just outside those spots, but with varying hope of qualifying, are Delhi Capitals, Royal Challengers Bengaluru and Lucknow Super Giants. Delhi have finished their schedule and need the sides directly above them, Hyderabad and Chennai, to lose their remaining matches very heavily to drop their net run rate down below that of Delhi, but it seems like a forlorn hope. RCB have to win their last match and hope the results of those sides above them go in their favour, and Lucknow need to do likewise, but also have to improve their net run rate to a seemingly impossible level to crack that top 4. The teams now without any possibility of a top 4 finish are Gujarat Titans, Mumbai Indians and Punjab Kings. Subas, with 3 losses in a row, Rajasthan seem to have lost form at just the wrong time, and they're also losing Jos Buttler, who along with a host of other England players are leaving the competition to link up with their national side ahead of the T20 World Cup. For a long time, it looked as though Rajasthan were cruising into the playoffs. Well, they aren't doing that now, are they?
Well, that one match, I think Sunrisers match was a closely contested one, and that made it feel that they're in bad run of form, and they have been unlucky in the last 2 matches as well. But I see them getting that top 2 position, even though Butler will be out for the playoffs. I think his compatriot Tom Cadmore could finally get a game, and more interesting thing is we'll open with Jaiswal up top. I think they'll be able to confirm with a win over bottom of the table Punjab, but Punjab will not have Livingstone's services, so I think it's a bit easy for them. Bad run of form for them, but I think they're good enough. They have experienced player to turn this around and get back to their winning mentality.
Yes, it's a big ask there for Tom Cadmore to come in and all of a sudden try and lift his game to the level of Jos Buttler, but that's what he's going to have to try and do. Jon, what about RCB's incredible turnaround in form? After just 1 win in their first 8 matches, they've now won 5 in a row to keep an outside chance of qualifying. It's shades of Australia's successful 1999 Cricket World Cup campaign, isn't it, where they had to win umpteen matches in a row to lift the title and they achieved it.
Yeah, it's a remarkable turn of events for them. Of course, they've got 1 match remaining. It happens to be against Chennai Super Kings, a shootout match. RCB's net run rate is below that of CSK, 0.387 compared with 0.528. And I think the calculations are that RCB has to win by 18 runs or chase a target within 18.1 overs. there is a forecast of rain around, I think, which might ruin it all.
Well, let's hope that rain doesn't play spoil sport, because it's all set up absolutely beautifully, as you say there, John, for a thrilling climax between those two sides. Subas, what about the Sunrisers? They've produced batting of the most spectacular sort in this tournament, but even they surpassed themselves against Lucknow. They chased down 166 for victory inside 10 overs, 9.4 overs to be precise, in fact, with Abhishek Sharma and Travis Head hitting 16 fours and 14 sixes in that time to win by 10 wickets. That came after a run of 3 losses in 4 matches. The Sunrisers really have almost literally lit up this tournament, haven't they?
Yeah, I think they're most reliant on their openers. So once the openers don't work, I think they look to be on the back foot straight away. In all the matches they lost, either one or both the openers are out early. And if the openers end up getting the power play, I think they're already in good state most of the times, and other batters just need to do their job. They've got good middle order batters like Markram and Henrik Larsson, but I think their role has been limited once the top order goes berserk, like they've been doing most of the time. So I think it's not getting much game time that they're getting to carry on their momentum. Like Larsson, we've seen them start the season very strong, but once the top order gets to bat in most of the matches, I think his role is being limited. And similar to Nitish Kumar Reddy, I think his emergence is one of the stories of the season, but I think it's still the openers that sets the tone for Sunrisers and not the middle order.
On another tack, it was very interesting to hear Jay Shah speak over the past week about the impact substitute, a topic that's drawn criticism or comment from lots of former and current players during this tournament, and it's a subject that we've touched upon here at the Wicket. That said, Ravi Shastri and Ravichandran Ashwin have both come out in support of the idea. It's been spoken of as one reason for the elevated scores and strike rates at this year's IPL, and Mr. Shah said there would be consultation with stakeholders after the tournament about the future of the innovation. John, I just wonder, with a comment like that, is this the BCCI just laying the groundwork for quietly ditching the idea, or is it their way of just trying to kick the topic into the long grass?
Well, it's developed into a complex topic, but for me, the key phrase in Shah's comments were that the biggest advantage of it is that 2 Indian players are getting a chance in each game, which is most important. Now, how much of a chance? The odd over, the odd innings? Has the expansion to 10 teams actually exposed the lack of depth in India's domestic bowling talent? As you mentioned, the issue is polarised views, no doubt about that. It does seem to have had some influence on the high scores, with sides knowing that higher risk can be taken with greater depth in the batting lineup. Chasers can also have gone deeper, making it, I suppose, a better spectacle for the spectators. But does it choke the development of all-rounders? And is it right that a player can play an innings and then play no further part in the game? I think you've really got to ask yourself, who is really benefiting from the innovation?
Yes, it's a topic that we could talk about at length. In fact, we could have a whole podcast on it, really. Sebastian, in one sense, it could be argued the innovation now in its second season has been a success, I guess, given the way it's helped produce such explosive batting. But doesn't the fact that it doesn't exist in ICC events like the upcoming T20 World Cup, which remains a pure 11 versus 11 contest, mean the whole idea lacks context, as well as lessening the role of all-rounders, as John said?
Yeah, as I've been saying, I think it favors the entertainment aspect of the game more than the cricketing one. Captains and teams in IPL play like they have an extra player even while batting and bowling, and the case is different when they play for the national team. Then I think this has hampered India's preparation the most. Indian all-rounders who could be used as part-timers in the national team aren't getting much bowling, and that hampers the players' development as well. Some exciting all-rounders like Nitish Reddy, even Shubham Dubey, who is already in the plans of World Cup, are not getting to bowl. I think that declines their all-round ability, and if they are not being tested in these tournaments, I think it's hard to experiment them in the national team. 11-11, I think that tests the team's balance, and it should be the way it is.
Well, leaving aside your personal views on the subject, gentlemen, do you think the impact sub will be retained beyond this season, or is there just too much noise around it to make it credible going forwards? John, I'll start with you.
Well, the noise is not one way. It looks to me as if the BCCI is flying a kite. It'll probably assess the views and outcomes of the T20 World Cup. Was it more or less exciting or lower scoring than the IPL? And the impact sub was a BCCI invention for the Indian market, and I guess it hopes that it might catch on. My bet would be that it's retained with tweaks. such as allowing one bowler 5 overs to bring some rebalancing into what has become a two-batter-oriented competition.
That's a very interesting take on things, John. Subas, we know your views are against the idea of the impact sub, but at the same time, do you think it will be retained?
I think it will be, but I hope it does not, because I'd like to see cricket competed 11 versus 11, team deciding that they're playing 11 ahead of the toss, and classic cricket. I think we have too much experimentation done already in T20 cricket, and it would be a criminal for bowlers to get at the receiving end of it once again.
Yes, bowlers certainly have been on the receiving end, particularly in this tournament. Goodness me, they've got stiff necks from looking up to watch the ball sail over their heads so many times during this IPL. Let's throw things forward now, though. We discussed on the previous podcast who we thought would be the top 4. What are your views now and why? Subas, first of all?
I'm still staying with my decision, KKR and RR to top the table, play the qualifier one, and Sunrisers and Chennai to join them. But however, that virtual knockout between RCB and CSK is going to be interesting. It's Kohli versus Dhoni. Only one gets to stay. I think that's going to be an interesting one.
And John, what do you think?
Well, my view before it began was that with all of the changes, it was too tough to call. A lot of settling in to be done, and uncertainty over fitness of key players. I played chicken and suggested a top 4 of CSK, Mumbai Indians, RCB and Lucknow. Not a very stellar forecast. Obviously, has ignored the top 2. We merged and got that one hopelessly wrong. So yes, those top 2 places are cemented. The other 2, well, it depends on the CSK RCB match, whether it's abandoned. Rain, both teams will share a point. That won't be enough for RCB as they get eliminated with 13 points. CSK would end on 15. So we have to await the outcome of that one. And of course, if Sunrisers win both matches, they're in anyway. Lucknow can get to 14, but they have an inferior run rate. So I'm going for Sunrisers to take the 3rd spot. I think RCB have got the form to beat CSK, but will they be able to do enough to close that run rate gap? So I'm going to sit on the fence for that one.
Well, by the time we record the next podcast, the end of season playoffs will be upon us, and we'll chat about those here at the Wicket. Well, aside from the IPL, there have been other major talking points coming out of India. First and foremost, the role of men's head coach is up for grabs as the BCCI have opened applications. It's a position that's currently occupied by Rahul Dravid, but if he wants to keep it, then he'll have to apply, along with any other candidates keen on the role. Dravid's contract runs out at the end of the upcoming T20 World Cup, and the new contract will run for 3 years. John, this is interesting timing, isn't it? Immediately ahead of the T20 World Cup. Does it surprise you the way that this has been handled?
Oh, yes, it does. But in reflection, it's fairly typical of the BCCI's modus operandi. I mean, what do they hope to achieve? Motivate Dravid to galvanise the team to lift the World Cup, or demoralise the whole effort? Already the vultures are circling, starting to put their hats in the ring. But it does seem that Dravid's hand is weakened by this.
Yes, it does seem very odd timing in that sense. But Subas, the BCCI have also said they won't split the role between Test and white ball cricket, something, of course, that Pakistan have done recently by recruiting Jason Gillespie and Gary Kirsten. Is that a surprise, given the volume of cricket India play across the world and all formats as well?
I think with most of the teams choosing that route, I thought India would do the same this time. We've seen India signing NCA's VVS Lakshman covering the role to balance Dravid's workload as well. Not just about the tactics, but about the workload too, with the amount of cricket that India plays. I think it would have been better to have 2 coaches with the player pool that India possesses. I think they can have players preparing in respective formats apart from their core group as well. But this came as a surprise, and even more surprising, as John mentioned, just before the World Cup.
Yes, well, Jay Shah, the BCCI secretary, also said that the squad for the World Cup would leave in 2 shifts. One group of players not in the IPL playoffs, followed by those who were in the playoffs. And he said the BCCI would also be lobbying the ICC to see whether there was an option to stage the Test World Championship outside of England. The next edition is due to take place in England in June of 2025, but where it goes from there will be up to the ICC's board to decide. Subas, do you expect the the Test World Championship to migrate to India eventually? It seems inevitable, really, doesn't it?
Not necessarily India. I think June is not ideal weather for cricket in this region, but I do think the venue is best decided by sporting merit since it's one of tournament. Why not the winners of previous edition be hosts of the following one? That will give them extra incentive of getting to defend the title in home. All the way throughout the championship, they will have an eye to play in front of their fans as well. So I think for others to make sure that they don't get the advantage, they will try to beat the defending champions with extra motivation. So I think this should be decided on sporting merit and not give the hosting rights straight away.
Well, John, Subas makes an interesting point there about India in June. It isn't always the best place to try and stage cricket. Surely June is viable for England as one of the very few places that can stage Test cricket at that time of the year and get good crowds. So England would appear to be a very good and sensible and logical place for the final.
Yes, I mean, the BCCI doesn't give up, does it? Another example of greed and control and attempts to exercise power, which I think could do with being diluted. The cycle would have to move away from June in order to stage it in India. I mean, otherwise, where does Shah have in mind? The States? I would have thought a neutral venue is fair, given that the India-Australia axis looks likely to continue.
Well, of course, the last edition, in fact, the first two editions of the Test World Championship have been neutral venues. There was Southampton for New Zealand against India, and then there was the Oval for Australia against India. So from that point of view, I guess sides can't really complain about that neutrality. Of course, if England were to qualify for a World Test Championship and it happened to be in the UK, then that might be a different matter entirely. But, well, one thing is for certain, this matter is going to run and run, as is the issue, of course, of the role of the India head coach. And we'll keep across all these issues here at the Wicket and report back to you when there are developments. Pakistan's men have got an intense period of action ahead of them before they embark on their T20 World Cup campaign, with a 3-match series in Ireland followed by 5 more matches in England. The series in Ireland has been done and dusted already, and it produced 3 excellent matches. But in the end, Pakistan's power with the bat won through, and Ireland, having manoeuvred themselves into promising positions, weren't able to take advantage. In match 1, Ireland secured their first win against Pakistan in the format, chasing 183 to win thanks to a superb 77 from former captain Andrew Balbirnie, plus telling contributions from Harry Tector, George Dockrell, Gareth Delaney and Curtis Camphor. But back came Pakistan in match 2, cruising to victory as they chased an apparently testing 194, with Mohammad Rizwan, Fakhar Zaman and Azam Khan all flexing their collective muscles as they got home with a remarkable 19 balls to spare. Then in the decider, Lorcan Tucker, who was captaining Ireland, hit 73 from 41 deliveries, but Ireland subsided from 100 for 1 in the 11th over to 178 for 7 as Shaheen Shah Afridi took 3 for 14. Pakistan then knocked off the runs with ease, getting home again with a very large margin of overs in hand, 3 to be precise, thanks to Babar Azam's 75 from 42 balls and Rizwan's 56 from 38 deliveries. First and foremost, Subas, should Pakistan be worried about their conceding significant totals, especially when it's that attack that's been held up as one of their greatest strengths?
And not just attack, but I think pace bowlers have not performed as expected. If they are struggling against Ireland in condition, that helps them. This certainly raises questions. I think Amir and Sahin are supposed to be back by the next 2. Hassan Ali, Abbas Afridi haven't stepped up, and when the World Cup spot is up for grabs, they should be doing better. And I think this will create a selection dilemma in the selection committee itself.
And John, Mohammad Amir actually missed match 1 over the late issuance of a visa for Ireland. This has to be an embarrassment for Ireland, doesn't it? Especially as Amir actually has British residency. Surely in the 21st century, there can be no excuse for this type of bureaucracy, can there?
Well, sadly, such bureaucracy is ubiquitous, and there are many examples of how it's not improved in the 21st century. Now, if an official takes against you, it tends to take a higher level to resolve. And let's not forget that Amir does present a complex case. A technical issue was cited, which of course covers a multitude of possibilities.
Subhash, where does this series leave Ireland? A terrific achievement from them to win that first match. They ran Afghanistan close in a series in Sharjah in March. Now this series, how positive can you be about their prospects, do you think? It really does seem like a missed opportunity for a series win, this one, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's all positive looking at the result and the performance. I think the first game they crazed to win. They were in the game from ball one and they dominated Pakistan team. They had the moments in the second one as well. The third one being an easy chase with Babar Azam coming back to his best. I think some individual bowling and that individual batting for Ireland is a plus point. Batting was impressive in all three if you look. And in the bowling department, I think Josh Little will join in the World Cup and the bowling attack will only get sharper.
And John, what about the story that emerged from the boardroom alongside the matches that the Ireland men's team will tour Pakistan next year, with the dates provisionally set for August and September?
Well, notwithstanding the Amir visa issue, it seems that relations between the boards are very strong and very good. It's good to see that that's being continued. And of course, there may be opportunities for Irish players in the Pakistan Super League.
Well, these two sides will be facing each other again very soon, as they're in the same group in the T20 World Cup. Group A, alongside Canada, India and the USA. Ireland and Pakistan will face each other in Florida in their final first-round match of the tournament, and that is June the 16th. England's women have made a winning start to their international summer by winning the first of three 2020 internationals against Pakistan by 53 runs, but they got an almighty scare before doing so. England, without Nat Siver-Brunt for the first match of the series, slipped to 11 for 4 in the third over before recovering off the back of yet another outstanding effort by Amy Jones in her 100th T20 international. The wicketkeeper batter made 37 in 27 balls, alongside Heather Knight's 49, and with Danny Gibson adding a power-packed 41 not out from 21 deliveries, England scrambled to 163 for 6, a total that was far too many for Pakistan, as leg spinner Sarah Glenn took 4 for 12 and Lauren Bell 3 for 22. John, is it fair to say that Pakistan have basically forgotten how to win?
Yeah, it does illustrate England's strength in depth. I mean, there's very strong competition for places, driving them on. I'm not sure where Pakistan go from here. It's also worth recalling that there were 12,000 people watching that match at Edgbaston.
Yes, even at this early stage of the summer, there's huge interest in the women's team. And of course, at the end of the summer, is the T20 World Cup in Bangladesh to look forward to. But in terms of Pakistan, they're unlikely to get a better chance to win than this game, given you would expect England to get better as their own season progresses.
Yeah, I think that's very fair to say. England are likely to get better as they dust off their cobwebs.
And Subhash, are we being too harsh on Pakistan, given they've come straight from high heat and a draining home series against the West Indies in Karachi, straight into completely different conditions in the UK?
Well, you can say that now, but when you have team pinned for 11 for 4 in third over, I think they should have made most of it. The story could have been different if not for the cracking innings from Gibson down the order. 67 runs for the fifth wicket showed how England can react to the situation. You can say England knew conditions well and reacted to the situation, but Pakistan, I think they'll surely feel they lost a match that was theirs after that kind of start.
And Subhash, is this tour all about the 3 one-day internationals for Pakistan, really, given they desperately need wins in that format to avoid playing in the 50-over World Cup qualifier? Or are results in this format equally crucial, the 2020 format, given there's a T20 World Cup in Bangladesh in October?
Well, the 3 matches in ODIs are certainly that holds more importance than the other, but I think the T20 series at the start will act as acclimatizing opportunity for them. Pakistan are in very tough group in the World Cup. I think they're not looking at the World Cup right now. In case of selection combinations and individuals, yes, they might be, but not the result-wise. It's more about assessing the conditions in England ahead of that ODI series that holds more importance rather than the T20 World Cup that's coming soon.
And what about Amy Jones, John? A crucial innings and then 4 dismissals to go past Sarah Taylor's mark for England in the format, 75 to Taylor's 74. We waxed lyrical about Amy Jones on the tour of New Zealand, but she's done it again, hasn't she?
Yes, as you know, I've long thought that Amy should do better with the bat, and something seems to have clicked in recent months. She took 4 catches in that match as well, one of them pretty spectacular down the leg side.
Yeah, she's in the form of her life at the moment, and long may that continue. Well, the second and third matches of the T20I series are in Northampton on Friday, the 17th of May, and Leeds 2 days later. 3 one-day internationals follow those matches, and in our next episode, we'll reflect on the 2 remaining T20Is and look ahead to the ODIs. India's women have wrapped up their T20I tour of Bangladesh, and a very successful one it's been too, as Harmanpreet Kaur's side won a 5-match series with victory in all those encounters. We've discussed the first 4 matches of the tour in previous podcasts, but in the final match, India eased to success by 21 runs. Bangladesh made 135 for 6, their highest score of the series, but it was nowhere near enough after India posted 156 for 5. Remember, this was an important series for both sides, as the Women's T20 World Cup is all set to take place in Bangladesh in October. Subas, Harmanpreet pronounced herself highly satisfied with the results on the trip, but the one demerit has to be that only one India batter passed 50 in any innings, and that was Shafali Verma with 51 in match 3. Should that be a cause for concern?
With the batting lineup India has, I don't think not having big innings would be a concern, especially in T20. The number of impactful innings, I think, that they can produce is enough. Hemlata has made a comeback and has shown that she can score quick runs, carrying her form from the WPL. They already have Shafali, Harman, Smriti in top order, and rarely do we find all not 3 firing. We should not forget that they're waiting for Zemima, who missed this series with an injury. I think she'll be back in the World Cup, and everything looks set for them.
And John, what value has this series been to Bangladesh, do you think? They've seen the level they have to rise to in order to be competitive in the tournament later this year, but surely it must be dispiriting to be so far off the mark, as they were nowhere near winning any of the matches in the series. Is it glass half full or glass half empty in terms of what they've achieved?
As you say, a long way off the mark. It looks more like half empty. There's an awful lot to do to fill the glass up.
Well, a reminder that the T20 World Cup in Bangladesh in October, Bangladesh have been drawn in Group B with the West Indies, England, South Africa and Scotland, while India are in Group A with Australia, New Zealand, Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Bangladesh are in action on day 1 of the tournament on October the 3rd against Scotland, the runners-up in the T20 World Cup qualifier that wrapped up recently, while India's first match is on day 2 in Sylhet against New Zealand. Bangladesh's men have achieved a convincing 4-1 series win against Zimbabwe at home in a T20I series that's part of their build-up to the mega event in the Caribbean and the USA next month. Zimbabwe's consolation win came in the final match of the series with a terrific chase as Brian Bennett with 70 from 49 balls and captain Sikandar Raza, who made 72 not out in 46 deliveries, made light of an apparently tricky chase, topping Bangladesh's 157 for 6 with 8 balls in hand. That followed on from match 4, where Bangladesh sneaked home by 5 runs, defending a modest 143, thanks to the excellence of former captain Shakib Al Hassan with 4 for 35, as he bowled the final over, and Mustafizur Rahman, who was linking up with the team after a successful spell with Chennai Super Kings in the IPL, he took 3 for 19. But that followed a spectacular Bangladesh batting collapse from 101 without loss in the 12th over to that total of 143. Taskin Ahmed, the fast bowler who was named player of the series, has picked up a side strain. Subas, how worried should Bangladesh fans be ahead of that World Cup with that news?
Well, he was in top form and covered Mustafizur's absence as well. I think the fans were excited to see them partnership with a new ball. The injury means they'll need to wait. I think series against US ahead of the World Cup is time where they will see Fizz back, get into the team. Taskin is included in the World Cup squad, so I think selectors believe that he'll be back in time for the World Cup, and I think they should rest him for these practice matches so that he'll be 100% fit, and we have seen what he can do. And I think Fizz and Taskin up top is Bangladesh fans' dreams.
John, what about Zimbabwe? Sikandar Raza spoke of moving forward with young players afterwards. What did you make of that comment?
Well, he made mean it specifically in relation to the T20 team and T20 cricket to actually build a new team. You mentioned the older guys are going to be around for ODI and tests, but I don't think they really have much alternative but to look for younger players, particularly in the very short version of the game.
Yeah, Sean Williams, off the back of this series, has announced his retirement from T20Is, although he's continuing to be available for tests and one-day internationals. Sebash, that solitary Zimbabwe win was still quite important, wasn't it? As it leaves them in with a decent shot at direct qualification for the next T20 World Cup in 2026. Based on their position in the ICC rankings. The battle is between themselves, Ireland, Scotland, Namibia, and the Netherlands. So out of an apparently disappointing series, there is something positive for them to reflect upon.
Yeah, I think that has been the idea for Zimbabwe after losing the qualifiers. They're choosing the young players with a long run thinking. Sikandar, as he said, that he's vocal about getting new players in the setup, which will ultimately help them in other formats as well. And with the team they have, I think I still need to remind myself that they're not playing the World Cup this time. I think it's a big shock. It's absurd that a team of players possessing such qualities are not in this time. And even for the next time, I think this World Cup result will have a huge effect on how the qualifiers will go on. But if you look at the rankings, I think Zimbabwe, they're focusing on getting the rankings up and not making sure they don't have to miss the World Cup next time.
There's been momentous news in the past week with confirmation that England's seaman swing bowler James Anderson will be retiring from international cricket after the side's first test of the summer against the West Indies at Lord's in July. It's momentous because Anderson has played international cricket for more than 20 years. He has 987 wickets in international cricket, a mark beaten only by Shane Warne and Muttiah Muralitharan, both spinners incidentally, of course, and his tally of 187 tests has been surpassed only by Sachin Tendulkar. John, first of all, your reaction to this news?
A bit surprised, though it had been trailed. Sad, disappointed, seems a bit premature. What is surprising is Jimmy's equanimity. No histrionics, no expressions of anger, just seemingly acceptance. I think in this English summer, he could have played throughout, but it just looked like a deal's been done, retire at Lord's, although why not Old Trafford, and join the coaching staff, as England have been without a bowling coach for some time, given that they've had Anderson and Broad to effectively do that role. If England's quicker bowlers pull up lame later in the season, who would have egg on their faces as they turn to look at Jimmy Anderson?
Well, of course, he hasn't as yet said he's going to walk away from first-class cricket with Lancashire. That's something that he's made clear he's going to have discussions with the county about. But, John, what's your abiding memory of James Anderson and what he's achieved for England cricket? So many of them, of course.
Yeah, I've seen Jimmy bowl a lot of overs, but unlike Stuart Broad with his 8 for 15 at Trent Bridge, for example, I don't have a single abiding memory of him, which says much for his incredible consistency. I mean, he and Broad have set a very high benchmark for those who come after them. And what I can say is that, thank goodness, his career was not halted by stress fracture in 2006 and questions about his action, in particular his follow-through, from the England camp round about that time. You know, the appearance of a grumpy man, yes, but I think a top man, top bowler, generous in spirit, remained true to his Burnley values. And I think it's one of those cases where you can genuinely say that there will never be any cricketer quite like him.
Yes, it's quite a legacy that he'll leave for England. Sebash, I guess one of the things many will reflect upon is his duels with the very best batters of his era, Sachin Tendulkar and Virat Kohli in particular. He dismissed Sachin 9 times in 14 tests, more than any other bowler, while he did the same to Virat 7 times. Those contests always mouth-watering from a cricket purist perspective.
Well, he was one of the best in the business, and that stat alone shows how long and how good he has been. To be traveling to players from different generations, I think that's a prized acclaim. And the fact that he took 149 wickets against India at average of 25 shows how big of a problem he was for Indian players and even in Indian conditions. In conditions where spin bowlers were favored and the teams usually gave most part to the spinners, I think the numbers surely prove he was one of the elite. And also he had just played 2 matches in Pakistan, a place where pacers get help, adds up context even more. He was unplayable at times, even in the conditions that didn't favour him.
John, you've alluded to it already. Stuart Broad gone, James Anderson going, retiring within a year of each other. That does leave a big hole in the England new ball attack, especially at home Are you confident that hole can be filled?
At this stage, no. And I don't think it's a hole that can ever be filled, really. One of the main reasons is fitness. And Broad and Anderson maintained incredible, unparalleled fitness levels at the top of the game for so long. I mean, there are quick bowlers around in abundance, but fitness is a big issue for them. We've got Archer, we know about his injury struggles. We've got Ollie Stone, again, another one, suffered. Matty Potts, and Just Tong has been injured. Ollie Robinson, questions about fitness and temperament. And then there's Brian Carse and the John Turner. At home, England have got, I think, so a combination of the ones I've mentioned should get through. But it's away from home where the issue lies, and obviously behind the selectors' thinking, trying to build to the Ashes. But it's going to be a big task.
Following our mention on last week's show about the Pakistan Cricket Board's plans to switch the Pakistan Super League to April and May of next year, comes the news that the UAE's own T20 league, the ILT20, is going ahead starting on January the 11th, 2025. There was discussion about whether they would switch to a November window this year because of the numbers of competitions set for the start of the year, as the Bangladesh Premier League, South African T20 League and the Big Bash League in Australia, as well as New Zealand's Super Smash, are all likely to go ahead then. But the ILT20 decided to retain the slot it's occupied over the past 2 years, and now there's that certainty. We await news of whether or when they will have a draft, especially of local players, and how overseas players will be signed, either via a draft or direct signings. John, November was suggested, but due would be likely to be a major factor then, as we saw in the T20 World Cup in 2021. So there's a sense in this decision that it's probably the right one, isn't it?
I suspect due is not the only factor. I guess is that the stakeholders couldn't reach a consensus. I mean, I've no idea if the franchise organisers or the franchise owners in the other tournaments, they talk to each other, but they should. Otherwise, we're in Wild West territory with overlapping dates and the ridiculous movement of players for what appears to be nothing other than money once the teams get knocked out.
Yes, it was interesting to read one of the representatives of the Caribbean Premier League saying that they'd been in discussions with the 100 to try and do exactly that and ensure there was a minimal overlap between their two competitions. And you hope that there'll be something similar with other tournaments going on around the world. Subas, do you think the league has the pulling power to compete with those other competitions taking place at the same time and pull in the best players?
If you look at the finances, I think the players surely will be interested, but you can't expect players living their own leagues to come and play with boards now getting rigid on providing NOCs. I think it will be tough. If you won't have players from Australia, South Africa, or New Zealand, and with India already out, I think that will surely leave them short on getting proper T20 players on basis of popularity. But I think overall, you'll need to get the players to leave the board contracts or someone who's retired. So it's a bit of a tough job to get prime players in living their own leagues.
And John, what about changes to the next edition? Do you think the ILT20 will retain the Super Sub, which was used, of course, in the most recent edition that took place in January and February of this year?
It may depend upon the IPL's decision on the matter. And even so, the dynamics are different in that ILT20 has a 9-2 split between overseas and local players. Depends on what is the purpose of the Super Sub. Is it to get another local player in or replace an overseas player? I guess the latter. So someone gets a game who might otherwise be twiddling their thumbs. But with Subas, really, I'm not convinced that substitutes in cricket are natural bedfellows.
Finally, gentlemen, as we always do, let's hear from you about something that's caught your attention this week in the world of cricket. John, first of all.
Well, the spat by the owner in relation to KL Rahul was a bit perplexing. Why the owner should feel aggrieved at the captain, given the team lost by a margin that was devastatingly large. It was brought about by some sort of otherworldly batting. Looks to be more about the owner's ego than about any disagreement on a strategic call made by the captain. So I think that was pretty unsavoury look for the IPL. And of course, there's the other aspect, a rather sad thing, which puts the above into perspective, was the death of Josh Baker of Worcestershire at the tender age of 20 on day 3 of a second 11 game. It's a real tragedy.
Yes, that puts everything into perspective, as you say, John, the loss of a young life and a promising young cricketer. And our thoughts go out to his family and friends. And very sad news indeed that. Subas, What about your reflections of the past week?
Yeah, it was surprising to see Nepal being the first country, I think, to get to the US and the West Indies 1 month ahead of the World Cup. The preparation has been fabulous, but along the way, I think it shows a concern that the players might burn out with the number of matches and the traveling they've done. Credit to the CAN, they reached US 1 month ahead of the World Cup. I hope this will give something out of nothing for in the World Cup where we're in group of death.
Yes, it's interesting to think that Nepal's last group match is Sunday, the 16th of June. So that's a month away. And yeah, they're already in the region preparing. So, well, it can go one of two ways, I guess. It can either give them excellent grounding in conditions, or they can be exhausted by the time they get to the end of the group stages. We'll just have to wait and see which of those two ways it goes for them. Well, that's us all done and dusted for another episode. Thanks so much for joining us here at the Wicket. We'll be back soon with more cricket chat from the Gulf region, Asia and worldwide. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on what you've heard wherever you get your podcast. We'd love to hear your feedback and let us know if there's anything you'd like us to feature in future episodes. For now, though, this is Brian Murgatroyd along with Jon Pike and Subas Humagain saying thanks for listening, and we look forward to your company again next time.
Hey, goodbye.
Goodbye.